Late Republican Representative Don Young is lying in state at the Capitol Rotunda. The Alaska lawmaker died on March 18th at 88 years old, and he was the longest tenured Republican in Congress. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle spoke fondly of Congressman Young, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy. Here's what McCarthy said during his memorial service earlier.
I don't know what type of teacher Don was in Alaska, but I could only imagine he was good, because he was a great teacher to all of us in Congress. And it didn't matter what side of the aisle you stood.
Joining me now, Nathaniel Herz. He's a reporter for the Anchorage Daily News. He joins us from Alaska. This legend of American politics has passed, Nathaniel. The seat is now vacant, needs to be filled. Who's vying for the former congressman's seat?
I think the better question is who is not vying for the seat. It feels like almost everyone and their sister here in Alaska, it's a small state, about 700,000 people, is talking about it. Maybe not 700,000 people, but there were a couple of declared candidates in the race. There's a Democrat who's the vice chair of the Anchorage Assembly or City Council, basically. His name's Chris Constant. Interestingly, there is the grandson of the man who was killed in a plane crash in the 1970s, who originally held the seat that Don Young then filled for the past almost 50 years. That was Nick Begich, and Nick Begich III is actually running as a Republican. Since Congressman Young's death a couple weeks ago, we've had an independent who ran for U.S. Senate 2 years ago with the Democratic Party's endorsement. His name's Al Gross, has declared as a candidate. And then we've got a whole bunch of people, including a couple of folks who were very close with the congressman, a state senator, a Republican named Josh Rieback, and then a native leader, Tara Sweeney, who had a high position in the Department of Interior during the Trump administration and was also an executive at an Alaska Native corporation. They've both said that they're seriously thinking about running. There's some other Native leaders. There's some folks from the business world. The Anchorage Daily News, my newspaper's gardening columnist who also used to be an oil and gas attorney here in Alaska. He's pretty serious about running. So it's a laundry list, and the filing deadline is Friday. So, plenty of time for more people to get in.
Oh, plenty of time. Get many hours to get many more candidates. Alaska is one of these states and regions that passed this innovative ranked choice voting. Did so pretty narrowly back in 2020. It's innovative, but it's also tricky. Give us a primer on how it works.
Yeah, so it's a total overhaul of Alaska's election system, not just the ranked choice voting in the general election, but we've also got what's being referred to as an open primary, where anyone runs in the primary. There's no partisan primary, so it's not like a Democratic Party picks a candidate, Republicans pick a candidate. Everyone runs on the same ballot, and then the top four will move on to the general election. And in the general election, voters are asked to rank their choices 1 through 4, although you don't have to rank all 4 candidates. And there's sort of I'll get yelled at if I say complicated. There is a system in which the lowest ranking candidate, the candidate with the fewest first choice votes, gets eliminated after a first count, and their second choice votes then get redistributed to the rest of the candidates that are remaining until someone gets 50% plus 1, or there are only 2 candidates left, at whichever one has more votes is declared the winner.
No one should yell at anybody for calling that complicated, but you nailed the explanation, Nathaniel, and I think it's a system more states are adopting, so we all do need to become familiar with that. Every election for Congress in Alaska is a statewide election. House is, Senate is. And of course, on the Senate side, Republican incumbent Lisa Murkowski faces a number of challengers in her reelection, including a Trump-backed challenger. How might ranked choice voting help or hurt the incumbent senator in this reelection?
I think it's a good question, and I would love to be able to give you a really clear, compelling, informed political insider answer that, all the Democrats that would vote for a Democratic candidate then will move over to Lisa Murkowski, and that will hurt Kelly Tshibaka. But I think anyone that really tells you they have a firm understanding of how this system is going to work and how it's all going to play out is someone with an agenda. And I don't have an agenda. I'm just a guy trying to keep Alaskans informed. And I think myself and a lot of smart people that are following this race really are going to kind of have to wait and see how this plays out, because it's the first time it's been done here. It's only been done in a couple other places in a really high profile way around the country, including I think San Francisco, New York City, and Maine. So it's kind of a mystery.
Sure. So I think one thing that ranked choice voting does, its supporters say it adds a level of fairness, but it also takes away some of the predictability. So it's difficult to forecast where it's going to go. We've seen in the past, Democrats have won statewide in Alaska before, including in the U.S. Senate race, Senator Begich, about a decade ago. Is Alaska still winnable for Democrats in this new era of American politics?
I mean, I'm going to give you the same answer. I'm not a pollster, and I wouldn't deign to predict that. I think certainly, we saw Joe Biden in 2020 win Anchorage, which is Alaska's largest city with about half of its population. So I think Democrats and independents would tell you that Alaska is winnable for Democrats and independents. I think Republicans will tell you that Alaska is a Republican state. And every couple of years, we get a referendum on who's right. And, I think in 2020, we had a pretty strong and well-funded independent Democratic endorsed challenger to Republican Senator Dan Sullivan in Al Gross, who is now running again for this congressional seat. Al Gross lost pretty decisively. And so, I think that's one data point. But again, as you said, back in 2008, Mark Begich, a Democrat, won a U.S. Senate seat. About 7 or 8 years ago, we had an independent running with a Democrat win the gubernatorial election. So, I think in Alaska, it's a great thing about our state and about our elections here that, you never know what's going to happen, and certainly wouldn't count anyone out.
And of course, we had an incumbent in Alaska win as a write-in candidate. It's an unpredictable year and a historic year in Alaska. There is an open U.S. House seat for the first time in 2 generations. Nathaniel Hertz in Juneau, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.